Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Yep. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're glad you're in class with us today. Broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Link to your instructors on the website, USAPREPARES.com. Guineith Isaacs is with us today. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Hey, do you think I'm doing well. Do you think your phone lines have gotten better since the storm that you had?
If we drop out halfway through the call today, it's not the it's not the Black Ops people.
Yeah, not today.
Lousy local telephone exchange.
Yeah. So, Patrick, Patrick's engineering today. So, Patrick, if we lose the connection with Guineith, please call back. And I can say that yesterday, Guineith, when you and I were just chatting off the air over the weekend, I would say we've disconnected at least six times in a period of maybe 10 minutes.
I would say that it was about that, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to share with you a little note I got on an email today. I was invited to Dr. Norman Shealy's 85th birthday party over the weekend, and it was a wonderful time. Mrs. Finelli and I went to his farm, and his family was there, and a few friends, and it was just a wonderful time. So I sent Dr. Shealy a thank you note, an email. I just said, had a great time. Thank you for, inviting us. And I just got a note back this morning, and it says, thanks for being in my life, ! Hugs, Norm. That's all it says, okay? My note to him was, I said, Norm, thanks so much for inviting me and my wife over for your birthday celebration. Great fun and conversation. Please let your daughter and her husband know that they did a wonderful job. Thank you again, Vincent. And again, from Norm, it was thanks for being in my life, ! Hugs, Norm. So I am really thankful for those who are in our life. And the reason I mentioned that, Guineith, is thank you for being in my life.
Oh, thank you.
So I just wanted to say that publicly. And it's great to be broadcasting with you. So, Guineith, I have a friend. I haven't seen him in over a decade. He lives in Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. And he made the newspaper when we first moved into Virginia, like 3 decades ago. And the newspaper, I didn't know him at the time, but the newspaper was talking about how he refused to get a dog license or a permit to have a dog. State issued. So this is 3 decades ago, actually over 3 decades ago. And I was thinking about that because that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about dogs and state issued and county issued and city issued permits in order to have one. And I was kind of talking with our engineer, Patrick, about this before the broadcast. And I said, Patrick, this may affect you because he has a cat. And he and his girlfriend share their lives with a cat. Well, it may get to the point where you have to have a state-issued permit, unless we nip this thing in the bud, to have a cat. And I don't have a permit to have a dog here at the farm, and I'm not going to get one. And I don't want to have a collar on my dogs. Actually, the only one who has a collar is TJ. He's a Mastiff, and that was when we were training him. I wanted to have something where I could, show him which direction we're going. And so I just took this piece of really heavy nylon rope, and it's actually flat, so it's like a ribbon. But it was used for banding lumber together. It's soft, it's pliable, it's woven nylon. And I couldn't get a collar to fit him if I wanted to. His neck is between 32 and 34 inches. So I just got this piece of nylon, and it's been there ever since. And I wanted to have my name on it and our phone number, so if he got lost, when we first got him, that we could get a return to sender. So I haven't taken it off him, but that's the most restrictive we are of our animals. Our animals are bright enough to stay home. They don't bother anybody. And I can't see any need to get a license, should there be one, for having our animals. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in Melbourne, it's in a lot of places in Victoria, it's actually, you do have to have a license to have a cat. And you have to keep your cat on your property, because if your cat is crossing the road and the animal control officer happens to be driving past, he's going to kidnap your cat.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, well, let me ask you this. So the animal control officer, is that what you called him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think they have licenses?
The dog ranger.
Yeah. Do you think they have licenses to have children like that dog ranger? Do you think they? I mean, what would happen? I mean, a cat is a member of somebody's family. If it's typically. Okay, and so are my dogs, and I get down on the floor with my dogs every day that, if I can, let's say almost every day, and I'll sit down either on the step and they'll sit next to me, or I'll get on the floor with them, and I thank each and every one of our animals for being a member of our family and for adopting us as their family.
Yep.
Okay, I don't say, TJ, I'm your master. I say, TJ, thank you for adopting us as your family. We love you lots, and I give him great big hugs, and I really feel that way about it, because he could just walk off at any minute. I mean, he could if he wanted to, but he chooses not to do that. And the rest of the animals think it's pretty good here too, so they don't walk off. But I'm just wondering if these animal control people have permits to have their children and members of their family, like our animals are members of our family. And I wonder what would happen if members of their families were kidnapped. For not having a permit to have one. Maybe and I'm not advocating that we kidnap them, but I wonder what they would think if they thought, I'm going around neighborhoods kidnapping people's members of family. I sure hope they don't kidnap my daughter or my son. I wonder what they would think. Maybe they ought to think like that. I'm not saying that we should go and kidnap their family members, but I wonder what would happen if they actually thought like that. Maybe they would knock it off.
That's how your animals become to you. That's just how it is. And, even more so, we've had, over the years, we've had one or two litters of puppies born here, okay? And some, many members of my family, I have known them their whole life because they were born here. They really were born here.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look at certain of my dogs and I say, something, I saw you when you were born, did. And some of them, I literally did see them get born. Mm-hmm. And, and to now see that they're grown up into mature dogs, well-behaved dogs, and just absolutely gorgeous, and to have them look up at you and have their eyes look at you, and the tails wag, and they're sitting and trying to be so good,
right.
And to think that I've known this animal its entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And dogs have, seems like, unconditional love. And our dogs have jobs. It's not like they just lounge around and do nothing all day and sleep and just say, yo, it's time to eat. It's not like that. Our dogs have jobs, and they seem to know what their job is. Their job is to patrol the farm and let us know when something doesn't appear right. We didn't tell them that that's what they do. They just assumed that that's their job. And they literally, yes, they literally patrol. They'll go in the barn, check out the barn. They'll check out the garage. They like being with us. And it seems like they want to protect us. For example, if I'm inside and the humans in our family are inside the farmhouse, I will see the dogs watching down the driveway, and it's a long driveway. You can't see the end of the driveway, but they will find a spot where they can see as much around them as possible, and they'll be facing the end of the driveway, waiting for whoever is coming into the farm proper, if you will. They're waiting to let us know, and they seem to, they may put their head down and take a nap, but their ears are up. It's like they're always on high alert. Is it the same with yours? Yeah,
that's exactly the same. And it is really interesting. They have jobs. They know that they've got a job, and the sort of dogs that we have at our place, there's four general spectrums of breeding. Okay, I don't think any of them are, there's one or two that are just about pure, and they would be Border Collie, okay? Mm-hmm. But not your, not your showline Border Collie. When an Aussie farmer talks about a Border Collie, it's shorter-haired, longer-legged, bigger-bodied, less cat-like, more working dog, okay? Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the sort of Border Collie that I'm talking about, working farm dog, working sheep dog. To Australian Kelpie looking, and then Jack Russell looking, and then Maremma looking. They're the four spectrums of breeding that go into the various dogs that we have here.
Gwyneth Isaacs is with us. Gwyneth, I am absolutely speechless. I'll tell you why. Last week.
Why?
Well, last week, you and I were on the air on November 27th, and Bitcoin was $9,702, 9702.
I know. Tell me about it. Oh, my gosh. Now it's over $1,100.
Yeah, 9702 for one of them. Yep. Today, 11,441. Now, 11,441. Well, okay, so it's moved $1,739 positive since you and I last talked.
Yep.
$1,739.
Yep. I will mention
in a week.
Here.
In a week.
I was talking with you off air, okay, about Bitcoin cloud mining. And I did some more research after I got off the phone with you. And, I have to let the class know to very, very carefully investigate any cloud mining ventures that they're looking to invest their money in, because a great number of them, including, unfortunately, I think one that I actually did put money in, are actually scams, okay? And the one that I'm talking about that I think is probably almost definitely a scam, and unfortunately I think I did put money into this one, was hash flare, okay? And it's just disgusting that people are doing that. It's becoming very, and I'll tell you how, it's pretty well for sure a scam. It's getting to be very, very hard for people to draw their money out of hashware. And when that happens, you can just about for sure say that it is a scam, okay? I don't want it to be a scam because I put a small amount of money into it, not a huge amount, but there are legitimate cloud mining companies out there. But, you've really, really, really got to research very, very carefully any company that you are looking to invest in to make sure that they are actually doing what they say they're doing and that they're not just pulling the wool over your eyes. And the thing is, with investment, none of us get it right 100% of the time. But I have to warn everybody out there, hash flare there's big red flags just been in the last week have arisen regarding this company.
Okay, let me tell you what I found. On the internet, there's a website called legalbinaryrobots.com. Opening sentence. Our team tested the HashFlare software and deposited the minimum $250. We had high hopes that HashFlare would make us good profits, but ultimately, the HashFlare system just doesn't seem to deliver on any of its claims. Okay, next sentence. It's titled Alternatives to HashFlare. The HashFlare system is a scam. You know it's fake because it claims you can win millions. Binary robots can make you money, but not this much. It uses fake video and testimonials. All of the robots listed here are safe to use, and they're talking about robots that they have in their on their website. Conclusion: the HashFlare system has posted very disappointing results if the complaints have been anything to go by. So those are some of the thoughts about HashFlare that are on the website legalbinaryrobots.com. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and
and
there's
by the way, it seems like Genesis is probably not much better, and it's likely that the Genesis, although Genesis does actually have their own server farm, it's likely that they are not, that they're running into problems with payouts as well.
Yeah, we are not talking about Genesis Communications Radio Network. Guineith Isaacs is with us in class. When we mentioned Bitcoin,
we're not talking about Genesis Communications Network. We're talking about Genesis Mining. Not the communication. Different company.
Yes, and Guineith, we need to let our class know that there's a lot of risk involved with these cryptocurrencies.
This is not investment advice. Go and do your own research.
Yes, correct, and be very, very careful. There are those who bought early, less than $1,000, and in about a year's time, that expenditure has grown in Bitcoin, for example, from $1,000 or less to over $11,000, and there's some pretty wild swings. I mean, extremely wild swings. So if it bothers you to see a $500 swing in a matter of moments, where you'd lose $500 per coin in a matter of moments, this is not for you. It really isn't. And I don't watch it every minute. I might check it, a couple times a week, maybe even once a week. And, before I click the mouse, I will put a number in my head and say, I think it's about such and such. This morning before I clicked, I thought it'd be about 12,000. And it was, it hit, 11,441. So I was off $500, but it was dramatic, absolutely dramatic from last week's $9,700 when we were on the air together. So a $1,739 positive upward movement in a week is staggering, absolutely staggering. So, who makes that kind of a percentage increase in a week for doing virtually.
That's amazing.
Virtually for doing nothing. Yes.
And do you know what?
Yes.
I was sitting. When I'm having my shovel therapy, which is my version of tractor therapy, because I don't have a tractor. Instead, I have a spade or a shovel. Mm-hmm. So I go and have shovel therapy, and I go and dig a hole somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
A hole or a trench or a garden bed or something like that, or a fence post hole or something. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking a great deal about why Bitcoin is having this meteoric rise. And, I think I might actually have it figured out. Because
I'd love to hear it.
There has been such a huge, phenomenal number of these annoying little creatures called Federal Reserve notes issued over the last 100 years, and they're not going away. And if it weren't for the fact that there was Bitcoin there, where the Federal Reserve notes, or the digital equivalents thereof, can be sucked into Bitcoin, then probably by now, in the United States and elsewhere in the world, you would be suffering. You would be enduring massive hyperinflation. But the value of the Federal Reserve notes are going into the Bitcoin as a storage place, because let's consider that nobody actually believes that the Dow Jones Industrial Average has any connection to reality anymore. I don't know anyone who knows anything at all about the universe who really believes that the Dow has anything to do with anything. It's just irrelevant. And
what you're saying is it was a leading indicator. The Dow in the 1960s, 1960s and the 1970s, it was a leading indicator. So if certain industrial stocks were going up, you could say, well, that's a leading indicator of what that industry is going to be doing, in the future, the near future, because the smart money was in the know. Well, now it has, it used to have something to do with sales. It used to have something to do with profits. It used to have something to do with products. And what companies make products anymore?
With anything. No. Because of the whole of the stock market has been overtaken by derivatives, and which are complex financial instruments that are basically gambling tax. Like if you put a bet on a horse race, you go down to the totalizer, or you go down to your bookmaker. He gives you a bit of paper with the name of the horse on it, and it's a number. And then if it wins, then you take that back to the tote, or you take that back to the bookmaker and say, "Hey, my horse won. Pay up. Here's the odds. It's written on the paper." Yeah, that's what a derivative is for the stock market. Okay.
Or what about taking that piece of paper, and then tearing it into 4 pieces, and then selling those 4 pieces to someone else who tears them in
400 pieces.
Yes, and someone else who tears them into 400 pieces and then sells them, and then someone else who tears them into 4,000 pieces and sells them.
Yeah.
Each piece.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what derivatives are.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And I remember...
It's got nothing to do with reality. It's a gambling scam.
60 Minutes television show in the United States. It was like a kind of a news-type show that would explain things at length. They had a segment on derivatives. And I remember that the investigative journalist, if you will, when he was doing this piece, was saying, we're doing this piece and we still don't quite understand what it is. Yeah, and that was derivatives. But it was decades ago that happened. And I believe that there might even be some of that video still around. But yeah, it's complicated and we don't understand it, and these are high-level bets, and they are so big that I believe they could take an economy down. And they're just gambling bets.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
and,
I think you're right about Bitcoin.
That's the problem with the stock market.
Mm-hmm. I believe you're right about Bitcoin. I believe that so many of us would like an alternative to the Federal Reserve Accounting Unit dollar, the fraud, FRAUD, Federal Reserve Accounting Unit dollar, that it is taking off. We're sick of it. We're sick of the manipulation. We're sick of the inflation. And inflation is an invisible tax. It's theft. It's theft. And there are people who like the idea of stealing from everybody, and that's what the Federal Reserve Accounting Unit dollars do. They steal from everybody through what has been termed inflation, which another way of looking at inflation is the reduction in the purchasing power of the frauds, the Federal Reserve Accounting Unit dollars. So, when I was younger, my dad said, this is back in the 1960s, my dad said, well, let's open a savings account and you can watch your money grow. And it would grow at about 5.25% per year. So you put $1 in, next year you have a little over $1.05 in your account if you do nothing. Well, now the amount of now if you were to put $1 in, you would get a little less than $1.01 back, and the thing that you wanted to buy with that dollar a year ago would now probably cost $1.25.
$1.20.
Yeah. So we're losing ground. So by saving money, we're losing ground. But I'm not telling people don't save money, because you have to save it somehow for that rainy day. And let me give an example of that. We had a neighbor who was arrested on trumped-up charges. And so this neighbor ends up in the local Huskow, the clink, the jail. And she needed 1,500 U.S. frauds to get her out. Well, she didn't have 1,500 U.S. frauds. So she spent a week in the clink. Now, let's say she had a job, and she was supposed to go to work. And the boss is looking all over for her. She uses her one phone call to call somebody in her family to try to get out. Now her boss is looking for her. She gets fired. She loses the income from that week and is behind. That's the kind. So do you need to have savings? Yeah, you do. You do. But too much savings is probably not a good idea, because you're losing traction through what is called inflation, which is the reduction of the purchasing power of the fraud, the Federal Reserve Accounting Unit dollar. I think I'm done with my rant on that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. And, and Paul Joseph Watson just recently put out a video on art, and that's another place where mostly people with a lot of money have been trying to put their money just so that it's not lying around, basically. And there was he pointed out that there was a Michelangelo painting sold recently for $450 million, and there was another painting that looked like a kid had gone crazy with a sauce bottle. Sold for $45 million.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
and that's risky art.
And the painting that looked like a kid had gone crazy with a sauce bottle, it had a friend. There were two paintings that looked like a kid had gone crazy with a sauce bottle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were both worth each $45 million, and it was totally ridiculous. And they interviewed the artist, and this was the technique that he used. He tied a mop to a very, very long pole, got a very, very big piece of plywood, and basically painted the plywood a base color like white, and then got the mop and dipped it in red paint and went around and around and around and around and around and around with red paint. And he let it dry, and that's worth $45 million.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the artists generally don't see that. It's after they're dead that we realize that, well, that guy was really good with a mop. We'll be right back. Guineith, we started this broadcast hour talking about dogs and dog licenses. And I wanted to share this with you that when we were buying dog food from a local cooperative that is associated with Big Agra, the Big Agra companies, they gave us a discount. They said, we've got some dog breeders in the area, and they get a discount because they buy a lot of dog food. And you buy a lot of dog food, Finelli, and so you're entitled to that discount. Okay, so they gave us a discount. And then they said, because of the volume of the dog food that we bought. Well, Missouri passed a new regulation that you have to be a licensed breeder in order to breed dogs. So it used to be that we had neighbors who would raise specific kinds of dogs, and they built these pretty darn expensive, if you ask me, buildings specifically for raising the dogs. One neighbor probably spent between $30,000 and $40,000 for what you might look at like a 3-car garage, that kind of a structure. I'm not talking about tarps and a couple pallets, kind of tied together. I'm talking about a nice building with a pitched roof, and a concrete exercise yard where the dogs could run out and do their business, and then they could be hosed off every day with a really nice building. Well, the regulations became so overbearing that the breeders gave up. They gave up. And so, state got involved, and the breeders gave up. And then, not quite simultaneously, but a little bit after that, we find out that the cooperative, which is all over Missouri, decided that it really wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that we get a discount because even though we're not licensed by the state to breed dogs, even though we don't breed dogs, but we do have a bunch of them, they are our farm dogs to protect our farm. They are our security system. Even though we buy a lot of dog food, as much as the breeders would buy, we're not entitled to our discount anymore because now it's not fair. See, before it was fair. It was fair because it was based on volume of purchase. We got a discount because we bought more than the average customer. Well, now because we're not breeders of dogs, and the dog breeders have been chased out of business by the state, now we don't justify, or they can't justify giving us a discount because of the volume. The volume is about the same as we've ever bought from them, but it's not fair to people who would pay more than we would. People who would buy smaller amounts of dog food, spend less on dog food. Heck, we spent $1,400 a year, 1 year on dog food. That's a lot of money for dog food. That's
not surprising.
Right, I'm not talking about lime and the other things and, food and supplements for cows and horses. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the one line item dog food. So what was fair before, this cooperative, this corporation decides is not fair anymore. It's awful. It's awful. They get these young people and they convince them that, okay, son, your job is to go beat up the customers. So go beat up the customers and drive down sales. So we've gotten so many regulations that the dog breeders have given up. I don't buy dog food from those guys anymore, the cooperative. I go everywhere I can to avoid going there. I literally go everywhere I can to avoid buying anything from that cooperative. And it's a farmers cooperative. Now, I used to be very loyal. And I still am. And let me tell you what my new loyalty is when it regards buying things. I'm loyal to whoever gives me the best value at that time. Now, 20 minutes from now, it may change. My loyalty may shift to someone who's going to give me a better value for my money. That's how I'm loyal now. I hate to say it, but they've done it to me. They've trained me to change my loyalty from trusting and believing in them to not trusting them and not believing them and not believing a word they say and not even considering their guarantees. because the guarantees go away when the corporation goes belly up or changes its mind.
I think we're at the top of the hour, aren't we?
We are. We'll be right back for the next hour. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Patrick is engineering the broadcast. And we're talking about loyalty at the end of the last hour. And I was talking about loyalty and how my loyalty criteria has changed. You know, I used to be loyal. You know, when I'm talking about doing business. And I've been taught by businesses now that there's no such thing as loyalty. There isn't. So now I am loyal to the best value at that time. Now, a minute from now, my loyalty may change to the best value a minute from now. And I'm sorry to say that. I am really sorry to say that. Now, I have loyalty to our affiliates. I have loyalty to the networks, absolutely. But I'm talking about when I transact business here locally in the Ozarks. I've been taught things like companies welcome my business, and they welcome me by as much money as I have in my wallet. So the more I have in my wallet, the more I'm welcomed. And if that money were to dry up, I wouldn't be welcome anymore. That's kind of how I feel about transacting business in the Springfield marketplace. Guineith, has anything like that changed in your life? Have you seen that kind of lack of loyalty, or is it just around here?
Well, you know, with regards to local businesses, you know, I would say that I would go with who has the best price. But the thing is that often, if you know, the fascists have absolutely just got their claws around this place so much that often there's only 1 or 2 businesses left in an area, in the municipality, that do each kind of good or service that you're after. Like, for instance, let's say that, let's say I wanted to buy, you know, like 10 highline hens, okay, or 20 highline hens. These are the brown layer hens, okay. There's only one place that I know of in the whole municipality that sells brown highline pullets.
Same thing. Same thing here. Same thing here. One.
Yeah.
Yep.
One business left that actually sells them, and you know, there's only 2 or 3 or 4 places that sell the dog kibble. Okay, and there's only one dog kibble mill left that's any good. You know, you can go down to the supermarket and you can buy Pedigree Pal dog kibble. These are the, you know, the little biscuits that you get, the little round things that, you know, the dry food that you get. Here they're called dog kibbles. Okay, it's dry dog food. You can go to the supermarket and you can get Pedigree Pal, or you can get Chum dry dog kibble. It's, you know, it's so bad. If you put your dog on it, your dog would, if it's a working dog, would just about starve. And the quality of the kibble, there's only one quality kibble maker left, I think, between Victoria and South Australia both. And so that's our state and the state next door. There's only one quality manufacturer of dog food left. And so if you want dog food, dry dog food, you have to go to that manufacturer. And they have mills in various places. Some of their mills are quite local. You know, they also produce human food as well as dog food. So it's the same company produces flour. And many of the wheat farmers around here, they sell their wheat to the same milling company. Okay, obviously they don't use the same mill for the flour as what they use for the dog kibble. Okay, but the thing is, it's not such a different process. For manufacturing a dog food than manufacturing something like a flour. Except that you've got to boil, with manufacturing the kibbles, you get the carcasses of the animals and you boil them up into a soup, and then you somehow dehydrate the soup, from what I gather. And then you get a powder, and then you crush the powder up, and you mix it up, and, it makes a kibble. I'm not quite sure how they do it.
Well, I can tell you that they use animal, they use dead animals. We had a customer in Virginia, and that's what they did. If there was a power outage at one of these chicken factories where they have this warehouse full of live chickens, and they just feed them for 49 days. They feed them for 49 days, and that's their entire life, 49 days. And then they're brought to the slaughterhouse where they're killed, and then you see them packaged.
If there's a power outage, the chickens die.
Right, they all die. And then, what do you do with them? Well, that's exactly right. So what happens in these power outages in Virginia and other places, they will bring in like a skid steer with a big bucket in the front, and they'll just scoop up these dead chickens, and they'll get picked up by this protein company. And the protein company will grind them up, put them in a big kettle, make like a stew out of them, and that is protein. That protein is the slurry that goes into the dog kibble. So when you wonder where the protein comes from, it's corn and some other grains mixed with this slurry of dead animals. Now, if a horse dies, no problem. Let's pick up the horse, and it goes into the vat. If you've got dead dogs and cats from a euthanasia type clinic where they kill dogs, and cats because the owners don't want them anymore and they can't find a home for them, next thing you know, they're killed and they go into the vat. So that's what happens to some of these dead animals. They end up, literally. And, and the people who
your dog or your cat could be literally eating, it could be engaging in cannibalism.
Well, and it gets worse than that because some of these dogs and cats have cancers and other diseases. And so, they've got cancer, it's going to die soon anyway, so let's just kill them. And then he goes in the pile, and then the protein company comes and picks up the dead dogs and cats, dead horses who have been euthanized or shot or just die, roadkill, you hit deer, and you call up the 911 or whatever you call when you see roadkill, and then they get picked up, and then the protein company gets the dead deer, the dead dogs, cats, snakes, all of it, chickens. Yep. Now, they don't take the feathers off.
I'll tell you something.
Feathers go in. Mm-hmm.
Now that you mention that, something has just occurred to me, okay? These council municipalities and the health department and all the rest of them have gotten so bad that they have ads sometimes, which is, if you have animals die of unexplained reasons at your property, please call us. And most of the farmers around here have gotten pretty wise that if they have sheep or, cows or whatever, die all in a row, you know what I mean, like one after the other, they don't call the vet anymore. They don't call the health department anymore. They just go out there with their 22 and they dispose of the animals and they dig a big hole and they put them in the big hole. Or maybe they would just call up the, protein company and say, I've got some carcasses here, come and pick them up, because the vets and the health departments, they come along, they do their lab tests, and whether they find anything or not, the farmer's often quarantined and the farmer's put out of business. And but that's what if that disease is something like anthrax that is killing the animals, and the farmer's not necessarily going to know that, and you can't kill anthrax. What was that?
And mad cow disease?
Mad cow disease. That's spread through prions, which is cannibalism. Yeah, cows being fed cows. And, people can get mad cow disease, and that's called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Here in Australia and in Papua New Guinea, they have another name for it. It's called kuru, okay? Because there's certain Aboriginal tribes in Australia that are still cannibals to this day. And I know this because I've met members of these tribes, and they have kuru. And they have this insane-looking, weird smile. And kuru has a nickname in Papua New Guinea, that's Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. It's called the smiling death because a symptom of it is that your facial muscles are paralyzed into a permanent smile and your eyes get an insane glare. But yes, cows get it, sheep get it. In sheep it's called scrapie. But, with their heavy-handed attitude, the health departments and the veterinary companies with their kowtowing to the government have actually made things a lot worse, because now often farmers just don't report animal deaths at all. They just go out there with a 22 and they get their bobcat out and they dig a hole. And that doesn't make the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and it doesn't make the anthrax go away. It just puts it aside into the groundwater and, or they light a big fire.
Guineith with us. Guineith, I've got in my hands a copy of a book written by one of our instructors. His name is Pat Shannon, Shannan. And the book is titled Everything They Ever Told Me Was a Lie. Sounds like us, doesn't it?
Yeah. Something, the other thing I was contemplating earlier while I was doing some shovel therapy today was I can't think of anything good, really, maybe with the possible exception of the family tax benefit. Oh, hang on. They're trying to manipulate people into getting vaccines using, the family tax benefit as a blackmail lever. Oh, sorry, we can't put that on the list anymore either. Positive things that the government does for you. And I can't think of anything.
The only thing that I can think of...
manipulation.
Yeah.
Everything is domination. Everything is enslavement. Everything's an extortion racket. Everything is bullying and thuggery. Yep.
Okay, manipulation.
That's how it is.
Domination, bullying, thuggery, extortion. That all fits with the IRS. That's what they do.
Yeah, they're a private corporation. Did you know that?
Yeah.
But what I'm a few years ago. Yeah, and he was actually an IRS auditor, and in his own conscience, he had to resign because he realized that he was an instrument of an extortion racket.
Yeah, and if you think about what it's like being in an IRS audit, and people are terrified of being audited. I'm not terrified of being audited. I think it's kind of amusing. I think it's a great. It's like a game of chess, literally. Except, it's for keeps, and there's money on the table. And whose money is it? Well, it'd be your money, right? So when you're audited by the IRS, I think it's like a challenging game of chess. And the words manipulation, domination, bullying, thuggery, extortion, theft, all those words apply. They really do.
Yep.
When you're
yeah. I'll tell you what they're doing in this country.
Huh?
What Cliff High was mentioning a little while back about how they are, depriving people in this country of their government checks if they won't get their children vaccinated. Okay. I had endured a lessening of my government payment. So I went into, it's called Centrelink. It means like Social Security. And I complained. And I said, in the nicest possible way, my check's been reduced. What's going on? And they said, oh, well, you won't vaccinate your children. And I said, listen, there's a medical exemption, and you've got to realise that they've got, my sister had 3 children. 2 of them were boys, 1 of them was a girl. Okay? She was a nurse. She fully vaccinated all of her children. Her 2 sons are both, one of the sons is the most severely autistic kid in the state. He's now in his mid-20s, and he will always live in a mental institution with a mattress on the floor and no furniture in his room. Why is there no furniture in his room? Because as soon as they put any furniture in his room, he smashes it. And my other nephew is also, fairly severely autistic. And my niece, who is their sister, she escaped autism, but she grew up, she did her nursing training, they made her take all the vaccines, and the next thing you know, she's schizophrenic. And I explained this to the woman in Centrelink, and lo and behold, the next thing you know, my family tax benefit was reinstated. I said, you've got to realise there's definite grounds here, and vaccine damage is absolutely a reality. My mum, she died back in 2015, but a few years before that, I'd gotten wind that it was going to be a deliberately contaminated flu vaccine, and I said, Mum, don't get the flu vaccine. Mum, just don't do it. She got it, and, within a week, she had basically severe pulmonary pneumonia, and it just about killed her. You've got to realise, these people are not your friend. Nothing that they do is good for you. Even the things that might seem to be good for you, you've got to be very, very careful. And, I still receive the family tax benefit because the municipality has destroyed the economy around here. And, I earn a little bit of money doing my telephonist work, but, otherwise, it's pretty hard to get income, and it's very, very fortunate that I actually own my own farm outright. That means that my family and I have a roof over our head, and we're able to grow vegetables. And a great deal of my spare time is spent growing vegetables and keeping chickens and, looking after my dam, which produces fish, and it produces crayfish, which we eat. This is it. You've got to realise these people are evil, and they want to destroy you on every single level. And there's very little that they do that is actually good for you. Yep.
Okay, let me put an exclamation point on that. I had a very dear friend. His name was Paul, and Paul was about 80 years old. And I would go see him, and he lived nearby, and we'd have lunch together, and we'd chat, and we'd talk about important things. And there was roughly 20 years difference in our age. And so I said, so what's new with you? Well, I'm going to the doctor's tomorrow. Okay. Well, Paul, look, they're going to want you to have a flu vaccine. Don't get it. Promise me you won't get it, because they're deadly. People die when they get them. Mm. And he said, okay. And I said, Paul, I want you to promise me. I'm really serious about this, Paul. Promise me you will not get the vaccine. Your doctor's going to tell you that you need it. And really? And he had cancer at the time, but he was doing okay. I mean, he wasn't doing great, but he was doing okay. And so the next day I called him up and I said, so how was your visit? And he said, Vinny, you're going to be mad at me. I got the vaccine. Doctor said I needed it. He was dead in 30 days.
Oh, gee,
painful,
really?
painful death.
Oh, my gosh.
And his doctor told him he needed it.
That is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is it.
And it's absolutely
why
true.
We are against vaccines. People have to realize this. It's affected us personally. It's affected our family. And we have seen our nieces, our nephews, our parents, in some cases our children. I dug my heels in regarding the vaccines, and when my older boy was tiny, we had the child protection looking over our shoulder. So, they would have made a lot of trouble if we hadn't vaccinated him. But he didn't receive any of his regular shots over the age of 6 months, And I believe that's why he's okay. And his brother didn't receive any of his regular vaccines. I just refused them. I said no. And they said, oh, well, why is that? And I explained to them about his cousin. Mm-hmm. And at that time, his niece had not started her nursing training because she was still a child herself. But, the two boys were both severely autistic. And, and they would whinge and moan and complain, oh, that's not related to vaccines, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. And I said, well, you know something? I studied environmental science at the University of Melbourne, and they said that there was a zero environmental tolerance for mercury, and you're putting mercury salts into the vaccines. That's just one case, and that usually shut them up.
Mm-hmm. Well, our children...
But the thimerosal is only one factor. You've also got the aborted baby parts, you've got the cancer cell lines, you've got a whole bunch of other adjuvants as well, fluoride and all of the... It's just a whole spectrum of it. It's just absolutely terrifying. Why anyone would want to do that is just, they really need to study of what these things are and think, do I really want to fill my body and my children's body with this stuff?
Okay, and so what is the problem? When children prepare to go to school, one of the very first thing that the school does when someone starts in a new school is, has your child been vaccinated? And, I don't think lying is a good thing. I really don't. I believe in honesty and integrity. And let me put a caveat there. Except when you have to do so to save your life or your health or a family member's. From the government. From the government, right? So, I believe in telling the truth. But when the government says you will put your child at risk of a life of pure hell with this vaccination, and then the government says, actually, they don't say that. You have to do your own research to find that out. But these vaccinations are very, very risky. So when the government says you will have one of these in order to put your child in school, get it now or your child can't come to school, and the government does not tell you, well, I'll tell you, we got this form in the nurse's office. All you have to do is put your signature on there that you object to this for a religious reason, and then everything is solved and you're good to go without having the vaccine. They don't tell you that. They do not tell you that you can exempt your children by having a religious exemption. So, when our children were in school at that time...
That's not available in Australia anymore, by the way. They've done away with that.
And it's going away here, too.
It's disgusting.
But what happened with us is they would say, have your children been vaccinated? And we say, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they've been vaccinated. Oh, yeah, all set. They're up to date? Oh, yeah. They're up to date from our point of view, okay? Not from the government's point of view. And finally, they said, prove it. And we couldn't. We couldn't prove it because we didn't have records that said that they had these scores of vaccinations. So I said, Okay. All right. We do not vaccinate for religious reasons. And I said, oh. Signed the form in the nurse's office, and it was
religion.
Right. And they didn't say, so Finelli, is that Catholic, Protestant, Episcopalian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist? What are you a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster? What religion is this? They never asked. And we weren't going to tell them anyway. Okay? We weren't going to tell them that we were raised either Presbyterian, Protestant, Episcopalian, Dutch Reformed, or Roman Catholic. We weren't going to tell them any of that. But they said, okay, fine.
It doesn't matter.
Sign here.
Because no matter what religion you are, it should be against your religion to inject your children with aborted baby parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
foreign bodies.
The simple truth of it.
Yes.
It should be against your religion to inject your body with cancer cells. No matter what religion you are.
Right. And I've been to Sam's Club, and they'll have this table there near the checkout registers, and there'll be people manning and womaning the booths or these tables, and you can get your free shingle shot. You can get it right there. And I'll say to Mrs. Finelli, I'll stop right in front of him, and I'll say, and I'll look at my hand as if I had a watch. I don't have a watch. But I'll look at my hand, and I'll say, oh, jeez, if we only had time, we could get our shingle shot. But we got to go. Let's go. And, it's just my way of digging these people. Why would anybody want to get a shingle shot? Now, probably the people who are behind the booths have been brainwashed into thinking this is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Measles, mumps, rubella.
Is not a good thing.
No. What I mean is they believe that getting the immunization is a good thing. They probably really believe it. They've been brainwashed.
Well, getting
thinking,
the immunization will give you shingles.
Right.
That's
right.
the plain
it does.
simple truth of it.
It does.
Yeah.
So I don't want it. And I don't want any members of our family to get it. And I've been cautioning them. Now, I know a young girl who wants to be a teacher. Now, here's the dilemma. She wants to be a teacher. However, teachers shall receive the immunizations to protect these little young students who are going to be in her class, whether it be kindergarten, elementary school or junior high through high school, whatever, or college. You will have these immunizations in order to teach at the government training camp. Now, how that's going to be resolved, I'm not sure at this point. But I've been telling her every chance I get. She's probably sick of hearing me say it. Don't do it, no matter what. It's not worth teaching these little thugs to put your life on the line. Don't do it.
Yep, that's right. And you know something, if everybody had that attitude of, we're not taking your stupid shots, no matter what, then they would go out of business. They would not be able
and not only
to do
that, let me say something that will probably cost us our one listener that we have. Don't take the stupid shots. I'm not going to take your stupid shots so I can teach your stupid children.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then their education system would collapse. And it would be a good thing. Because something? You look at the kids who have never ever been homeschooled, and it's like that they haven't got eyes on the front of their head, they've got two little black holes on the front of their head. It's like you could draw a comic strip of them and do the little swirly things for where their eyes are. You look at the kids who have been homeschooled for at least part of their education, okay? Mm-hmm. For one thing, they're generally not fat. They're generally of a normal body mass index, okay? Mm-hmm. For their family, I mean, if you get a family of fat people, the kids are going to be fat because of their genetics. If you get a family of thin people, like our family, then the children are going to be thin. But it doesn't matter, okay, because they're going to be healthy. But you look at the homeschooled kids, and their eyes are full of life and intelligence, and they have, a real spark about them, and they want to learn, they want to be engaged with the world, and the world's an exciting and beautiful place for them. But you look at the kids who have spent their whole lives in state school, and that by the time that they are like 14, 15, 16 years old, they are just, their minds are turned to mush. Their little eyes are little black holes. There's nothing there. And, you know, they wonder why there's such a high rate of juvenile depression. Well, try looking at the school system. Try looking at the fact that you are putting these children into a mental cage, and you are making their little lives, so uncomfortable if they dare to get out of that mental cage. You know, it's just not allowed for them to think anything contrary to what the teacher says. And if you get one child in the class that speaks up and says, for instance, something like, I don't know, I don't believe that carbon dioxide's a bad thing. That's heresy, you know.
Yeah,
I think that it's what plants breathe.
Our son,
because you know, my dad has a greenhouse and he has a CO2 bottle on the greenhouse, and it makes the plants grow better.
I'll bet it does. My wife and Mrs. Finelli and one of our boys were looking through some, you know, old documents that we have here at the farm, and my son was laughing about my 4th grade report card. He was reading the teacher's comments about, you know, Vinny disrupts the class. Vinny asks lots of questions. He talks too much. Why can't Vinny be like everybody else in class? You know, and you're right, and you're right about the homeschooling because I was at Sam's Club. Now, the reason I mention Sam's Club so often is there's a barrier to entry. Sam's Club is a part of like the Walmart group. And Sam's Club, you pay a minimum, it's probably $45 a year now, to have the privilege of being a member of this club. And they will sell things in bulk at a little bit less cost than Walmart does. So if you want to buy soap in the, you know, like a minimum of maybe 12 bars of soap at a time, you can buy that at Sam's Club. If you want to buy 1 bar of soap, you can go other places. If you want to buy detergent by the bucket rather than buy this, you know, a laundry detergent, then rather buy a bucket than a smaller quantity, a little box or something, you would go to Sam's Club. Well, you can save money doing that, and we have been a member of Sam's Club for years. And I saw this young, and there's a barrier to entry, okay? The barrier to entry to going to Sam's Club is you've got to pay the club membership annually, which keeps some people out because they just are not going to buy in bulk. They're not a business. And so Sam's Club bathrooms are generally cleaner than the bathrooms at Walmart. I've been at a Walmart and I've said, I've come out of the men's room and I'll say, well, geez, I'm really sorry. Looks like I missed the toilet paper fight that you guys were running, 15 minutes ago. Because
yeah, and then Walmart is full of aliens, I've heard.
Yes. People with multicolored. Yeah. I mean, some people really shouldn't be allowed out of the house the way they look. But getting back to Sam's Club,
they dress
I remember
up to go shopping.
Yeah, and Sam's Club is generally a little slower pace. People who go there are very deliberate about what they buy, and they've got a lot of items in their carts generally compared to most supermarkets and Walmarts. Well, I remember seeing this young girl, probably in her very early teens, with her mom shopping, and the girl she had that bright look in her eyes. She was very deliberate, and this shopping adventure with her mom was a learning experience, okay, for the daughter. And I mentioned it appeared that way from 100 feet away. And when I got close to them, I said, "May I ask, are you homeschooled?" And the young girl said, "Yes." And I started talking to her mother. I'm just looking at the screen here, well, it looks like we are connected. Guineith, when I was when I was a little younger and we were raising our children, our young children would say, can you do such and such? And I'd say, well, I can in about a minute or so. I'm finishing this one thing, and I'll be glad to do that as soon as I'm done with this. And Dad can only do one thing at a time. And they would say, but Mom can do 7. And but I literally only can do one thing at a time, or at least I can do one thing at a time better than I could do 7 things at a time. And the reason I'm mentioning this to the class is that I talked right into the break of the last break. And the reason is I fly by the audio more than I fly by the clock. Now, I do have an atomic clock.
We lost the little music.
Yeah. I fly right by... Yeah. I fly by the audio, and the audio gives me a prompt to look up at the clock. Now, and that's because I can do only one thing at a time. I'm either talking or I'm looking at the clock, or maybe I can do a little bit of each. But generally, I fly by the audio, so I talked right into the commercial break. And we were talking about homeschooling and homeschoolers, and you can definitely see from a distance, at least 100 feet, in my case, when someone is homeschooled. There is an obvious, deliberate difference in the way they behave, dress, act. They are generally not hyperactive. They are generally not looking down at their phone. They're generally not seeking constant rewards for just being there. They're generally not seeking constant attention. They're brighter, more deliberate, more focused, and better performers, generally speaking, in my opinion. Guineith, is that what you're seeing, or is it different?
I'm seeing exactly the same thing. You know, you can tell when the kids are homeschooled, even if they have been homeschooled for several years and then been put back into the school system. You can spot them. Okay, it's it's just absolutely amazing, and you notice that the kids who have had some homeschooling experience, when they go into the state school system, they tend to hang out together. They tend to become friends with one another. And the other thing is, the other dividing line is children that grew up in town versus farm kids, or kids that grew up on small holdings, kids that grew up on stations, which is what we call ranches in this country. You can pick the difference between them. The kids that grew up on small farms or ranches, they are more independently minded. They've got more of a go-get-'em attitude to life. They've got an attitude of, well, what are we going to do this afternoon? I don't know, let's go for a horse ride. You know, and when these kids grow up to be teens, okay, the kids that have grown up on small holdings or large holdings, they tend to fall in love with other small-holding kids or other rancher kids. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I do.
That's how it tends to happen. And that has exactly happened in our family. My older boy has met a girl that he likes, and he spends a great deal of time these days at her place. And, they're both, around about 16 years old. And, I did some research on who this girl was, and lo and behold, she's from a family that has a small holding, and her and her mother have horses.
And so he's riding horses. Yeah.
So he's riding horses when he goes over there. He already knows how to ride a horse, because I've had horses pretty well the whole time as well.
Interesting you say this, Guineith. That's what our son's doing. He and his girlfriend ride horses.
Yeah,
Guineith, thank
right.
you.
And it's
thank you for
fun.
being with us.